That's not Ivan. Who's that cat? A second monitor? Oh my God. Okay. Woohoo. What am I doing? That's not what I want. Oh my God. Okay. Hi everyone. My name's Ashley. I'm here to talk to you about what I've been working on for the past couple of months. Great. So I'm just gonna get started. Something that I want to make sure to emphasize is that I don't have all of the answers, or maybe even many of them. So I really want to use this time with you to field your questions and really get a giant brainstorm to see if I'm on the right track, or hear from you what you really want me to be doing with the things that I'm writing. So just to very quickly, broadly start off, something that seems to keep coming up in personnel issues with the job, and then concerns from department heads and volunteers, is defining nebulous policies that are just kind of been oh, things have always been this way. So some of the things that we've taken the time to quickly write down in Uber as things that need to be defined include having a written policy for which departments at Super should get a suite. Because there are some departments who didn't even realize that's an option. And no call outs, I'm not going to be, I have no judgment at all. This is just something that I have been told we should work on defining and have a process for applying and some sort of standards or something. Okay, the next one, which is probably also a little controversial, is having a definition and figuring out when should shifts be defined. And again, when should shifts be weighted? So should some departments just have 3 times hour shifts? And if so, why? So it's kind of just I don't have the answers for this. This is stuff that I need to work on defining. Another example is shoulder night hotel eligibility. Who should be allowed to have a hotel room for pre-event and after-event shifts? The other thing that I personally really wanted to define are emergency procedures. So what should all staffers do in the face of a fire alarm, or if you see harassment happening? And obviously that's really big. But those are just a couple of the ones that I gleaned from our current JIRA. And I was just, if you have any suggestions, please just write them in #MAGCon, and I will definitely add them to JIRA, and I'm super excited. Okay. The other thing that I've been working on is having a volunteer portal, which I've been looking into a lot of different applications, and one that I've really settled on that I like and at least want to test out a little bit is Twine. And I know it can be a little difficult to know what I'm talking about, but Twine is an intranet, and it's really something that I would love to be able to give off to any volunteer and staffer who signs up for a MAGFest shift, so that they can just go to this one website and everything they could ever want to know about MAGFest is there, including BOD meeting minutes and department procedures and department head contact lists and culture documents, including the core values, and hopefully even training videos. So if this is something that you're interested in having your department test out, we can make your own little groups and websites for stuff like that, please reach out to me. Yeah. So I didn't finish this slide. Oops. There was supposed to be a picture of Mochi up here, so just imagine a cute little dog. Sorry. I think that is a good metaphor. I really want there to be more communication involved in the volunteer process. I really do. An example.
More pictures of Mochi.
Sorry, Mochi's my cute little puppy. Anyways, an example is whenever I want when a volunteer onboards and signs up for a shift, or even marks that they're interested, I want them to very immediately receive at the very least volunteer handbook. And it can be totally sanitized, and that's cool with me. But just something so that they have an idea of what is it? What am I getting into? And I want to make sure that there are emails along the way for these volunteers, because if you're not on Slack, it can feel very isolating according to feedback that we've received, and that's something that I hope in conjunction with our intranet we can fix. I apologize for not finishing this, but I was working on a stream, and it took up more time than I imagined. Enough talking about that stuff. So I have a draft of this volunteer handbook. You are more than welcome to follow that link and offer your comments and suggestions. I do just want to be very explicit and say this is a super rough draft. I would not even call it the first version of a rough draft. To me, this is a vertical slice. It's just a concept. My intentions behind this are for the handbook, is to provide clarity for the volunteer process, so that they know that there's a whole list of departments beyond the ones that you have been initially assigned to, that you can reimburse meals. There are things that I feel at MAGFest there's a lot of assumed knowledge, and I don't want to have the volunteers make any kind of assumptions. I really want to give them a resource that they can go to and figure it out without necessarily having to take extreme initiative to think of every which option. So with all that said, I'm just gonna hopefully open this up. Yay, it worked. So I imagine this being very pretty. Right now this is just bare bones in Google Docs. I recently added our clarified mission and core value statements right off the beginning so that people can read it. I wanted to have a section about guidelines for the kind of behavior that we want to foster in volunteers. And again, this is just me spitballing ideas, and I would love to have my dream goal is to open this and have 100 comments, no lie, and it would be very exciting to have that. So I know that events are hectic, and I want to encourage volunteers to remember that whenever you're down in the weeds, if this is your first time in an event, it can be really easy to be this is a shit show. I see it all the time. I see it at Indiecade. I see it at Overwatch meetups. I saw it at the library. I saw it when Chance the Rapper put on concerts for the children. Every time I worked an event in my life, it can be really hectic. And I really want to provide that kind of clarity and context for the volunteers and staffers to know that it's okay. Sometimes things just are not going to be perfect. Every event is practice for the next, et cetera, et cetera. I also really wanted to just kind of hopefully combat any sort of elitism, and just reaffirm that every position and shift is important for a large event. Everything and also just to clarify again that we can't do illegal things as volunteers because we are representing MAGFest if we're wearing our volunteer shirt and all that boring HRE stuff. And also a really big one is just know your limits. I know it's super easy to always be yes, I can do that and I can do this and I really want to do that. And then as time gets shorter and the deadline gets closer, you can start to feel overwhelmed. And I just want volunteers to know that's totally okay. It's a human reaction. And to let us know so that we could help. I wanted to have a section about responsibilities that explains the etiquette you should have when you're wearing your staff shirt. If you wear your staff shirt and an attendee walks up and wants help, and you don't want to help them, just redirect them to another volunteer and realize that you are representing MAGFest to that attendee. To be trusted with valuable equipment, and I thought this was kind of funny, to only use it in the method requested. And when I wrote that, I immediately was oh no, I remember last Super one when I was using, what are those called? The pallet jack train thing. And I was whoops, well, that's not something that we should necessarily encourage. And then also to have the expectation that volunteers should remain punctual for their shifts and fill out their volunteer checklists. And again, if something comes up, just communicate with that so that we can accommodate. And then there's a section about conflict management, which is again kind of what I touched on earlier about when it's a stressful situation and emotions can get involved, and to always escalate if you feel you're a little in over your head. But if you feel you're not in over your head, that's great. So as I was writing those two things, I was the really big problem with all of this nebulous values-based stuff is there's not really any info about missing shifts and who gets suites and roommate assignments and even department assignments. So that to me, really outlined a giant need for us to clarify all of these missing policies. And of course, I'm going to miss the things that we need to add to this. But this is like racking my brain a little bit to figure out like what policies need to be listed. And again, these are just like me making a very first rough attempt at like clarifying these. So I talk about like what happens if you miss a shift, but I don't really talk about what happens as like consequence, because I don't know what should happen if you miss a shift and you don't talk. Like, should you just be banned from the event? Like, I don't know. I don't think so. But it's a slippery road, and it's something that I cannot write on my own. I'll have to write with feedback along other people. Something that like my friends who do want to volunteer for MAGFest since I've started have talked about is that like they don't feel like there's necessarily a place for them because some departments aren't public, and they feel like if they're just assigned to one department, that's it. That's their MAGFest volunteer career. No like if, ands, or buts. Like there's no changes. And that's not really something that I would want MAGFest's like first volunteer experience to be like. So I did just want to have a section, ideally, that talks about like the different departments and what they do and whether they're open and what jobs are available, so that people know that just because you are assigned to staffing support and or reinforcements doesn't mean like that's it. Like we're open to changing that. Again, I mentioned like the weighted shift things. We talk about like out of event hours and clarifying that these opportunities that you take to promo out of event can be applied for other events, which probably seems obvious to some people, but may not be obvious to everyone. I talk about like the fact that, again, like you can have reimbursements. I have a little section here about like the sensitive information. So like we give everyone, pretty much anyone, access to our Uber if they need it for their job. And that could honestly be used in a lot of malicious ways. So this is just kind of being like, please just use it for or don't use it for personal reasons or malicious reasons. Like, don't look up that person to like see how old they are. Like I've heard of someone doing that before, and I was like, that's not really what Uber access is for, to be honest. And they're like, well, that was never explained to me. And it's like, oh, well, let me explain it then. No. I have a little section about charitable contributions. I really should add Amazon Smile, so I'm going to try to do that here somewhere. Hopefully it works. I'm sorry, this isn't my computer, so I'm just winging it. Okay, sorry. I don't want to forget about that. I feel like Amazon Smile is really important, and it helped a lot at NDK. Again, different employers have different volunteer benefits, so it's just reminding them. And then something that I also really want to do is I want to have like an exit interview process so that like if people who leave MAGFest and no longer interested in volunteering want to share their thoughts like with a specific person, that like at least I'm very willing to hear that feedback. And I'm sure like other board, like the BOD and other employees would be more than happy to sit down with them. So. Yeah, all day, any day, every day. I actually really like that. That's lovely. And then another section that has probably taken up like the most of my time, just because there aren't really that many resources out there about it, is clarifying like a staff reporting problem. And just to specify, this isn't about like what should I do if this staff member is not performing correctly or if I'm having issues. This is like what should I do if this staff member is like clearly breaking the code of conduct, being rude, assaulting someone, stuff like that. I definitely want to talk about like, or I definitely want to create a process to report volunteers and work with them on improving like issues like perpetually being late or communication problems. But this isn't that, and I probably need to clarify that somewhere else. So something that I really want to have is as just like a list of resources that are available at any time. There is an anonymous reporting form, and I don't know why it's not linked there. Whoops. But you know, we do have like the Slack mods. There's always stops. There's on-site security. There's like the security email, and then there's even like a staff reporting email that I hope will go to a publicized member of committee. So like hopefully there will be like a staff reporting committee, and the people who are on that list will be publicized, so that if that person is comfortable reporting to that committee, they can just send that staff reporting at MAGFest email and not feel scared about who is going to read it. I have like the communications code of conduct. I did write like the Slack code of conduct a little bit, and this is something that I kind of want to zoom out in scope. Like I don't want it to be specified to Slack. I want it to apply to all of the other ones. And we already actually do have one. And anytime that I have found old versions of documents like this, I link them in here because it's my hope to incorporate them into this. I'm going to go down to staff reports. Sorry, it's long. Hopefully, how many of you have actually read the Slack Code of Conduct? I'm actually kind of curious. Okay, well, maybe I need to go over it then. I'm sorry. It's basically just talking about like the ideas of like things that could be offensive, the kind of like usage ways that we want Slack to be used. And then, of course, like what you should do if something makes you uncomfortable. Yeah, I tried to be as thorough as possible with this. So if there's anything in here you think should change, just let me know. Sorry, that's like a huge list of like all the different things that could happen. Great, that's where hopefully the staff director will be. This is me trying to talk about like what things could result in your removal from a department, and like the kind of steps that we already go through in those cases. So we do have like a watch list where like a volunteer has been given, or a volunteer and staffer has been given a warning, and with like a specific thing of like, please keep in mind that like you could use improvement on this. We do have a mentorship agreement where like if another department head or manager or event leader or even office member wants to like improve that volunteer, that they can engage in like weekly meetings with them and work on that. And then of course there's always like the tricky conversations and mediation with them. But even if you do all of that work and there's still a problem and that person has to go, it's trying to just outline like how that can look. Like we're not really, just because someone's not going to staff, ban them from the event. That just like doesn't make any sense. They can still attend, of course. So this section is really just about like the reporting guidelines. I explained that we offer anonymous reporting and personal reporting that's on site. I explained that there's a 24-hour security number that, at least for this past event, was located on the back of the badge, and that this isn't live, by the way, but it's an online reporting form specifically for like personal issues. We try to explain like when we take the report that we're doing it in a professional manner, that we're happy to accommodate you, and that we're never going to be like, well, why don't you just go talk to that person one-on-one? That's not the right way to like resolve those kinds of reports. And ideally, this whole handbook would also just be like an educational resource, because not everyone knows how to deal with reports, and I totally understand that. And not everyone is expected to. So it does talk about like how if at any point you feel like you can't handle this, like please reach out to someone, and like here are the different managers and people you can reach out to. There will be like a list of resources for each local event, so that any staffer could give it out to someone. Sorry, it's like kind of freezing up. Okay. So here's really the meat of it. This is like reviewing reporting steps and explaining that reports are kept confidential to appropriate parties. And I know right now it's very broad, but it's really one of my goals to like specify that to like a specific reporting committee, because like it can feel uncomfortable to just have that giant list of people and be like, I don't know who in those people actually read this confidential information. We explain like in a report, we really want to have contact info. We want to have like the names of people involved. We want to know like when and where it occurred, like your account, if you think that this is ongoing, and any additional info you can provide. But like those are all really just like guidelines for staffers to ask questions of someone who's comfortable. If at any point they're not comfortable, like just don't continue acknowledging, or don't continue the conversation. Another thing that I really want to work on is like whenever a report is received, acknowledging receipt. That's really important. It can really suck to send out a personal email of this nature and not hear anything back and not know what's going on. So I really personally want to make sure that staffers are aware that someone in this committee should be in contact with like what the process is like. This is just a list of like things that could happen after a report, such as like, no, we could determine like nothing happened. It could just be like a warning. It can be a temporary ban from events. It can be just removal from a department, et cetera, et cetera. This section is kind of training on like how to handle in-person reports. I'm not gonna read over it all because it is a lot. And I know it can be easy to just drone on and on, but this is just like based off of like the things that I have had to do when I worked in the libraries and worked with a lot of like youth and social workers. It's not like perfect by any means, and I've reached out to a lot of different events and like professional people in the game industry who work in esports, and a lot of these companies don't have this kind of stuff, to be honest. So it can feel a little uncomfortable for me to just like write something that's brand new. So I'm totally open to feedback of any variety. So yeah, that's pretty much the volunteer draft handbook right now. And again, like the intention behind this is to have like an all-encompassing document that can be handed to volunteers so that they are aware of like what our policies are and that there's one easy place for them to receive them. So yeah, I guess a lot of the inspiration behind this comes from, I used to work in the game development industry. I worked on games like Mortal Kombat and Saints Row and Injustice. And a lot of times whenever players would have issues with other players, there was like nothing that we could do. And like I said, I did reach out to a lot of my friends at events and in esports. And again, even in Overwatch League, they're getting into trouble with like not having this documentation. So I don't want us to not have that documentation. Like I understand that that's the status quo, but we can do so much better than that. And we can like provide support for attendees and staffers. And so this is just like my first iteration of it. And anyways, I would really just be curious in hearing any of your feedback now, if you're willing to share it.
I've got one.
Okay, great.
Would there be a part about talking to panelists and guests? Last year, I still don't know who did this. Somebody in a staff shirt started yelling at my panelists.
Oh my God.
Weird scenarios. I don't know who it is or what to do in that scenario.
Okay, that's fantastic. Yeah, I really like that.
Would be good too, just because like I still don't know who the person was. I know they yelled at me for a little bit, but I didn't know who they were until they walked off.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Volunteer benefits,
Let's see.
such as email accounts, business cards,
Oh yeah,
company car.
company car. Sometimes. Okay.
Could I buy an elementary school? Oh yeah. It was zero size. That was forever ago. We found an elementary school. It was abandoned. It was for sale for like $100,000, and we briefly, not seriously considered that.
The more you know. We almost bought an elementary school. That's interesting.
This was legitimately like 10 years ago.
Eli glossed over that one. Oh, believe me, I've got tons of stories. Like, if you guys just want to hear wacky Eli stories, like, I'll be around all day.
Talk to Eli if you want more info about the school story or more.
About Eli or told by Eli?
I don't remember if the school came before or after the abandoned building.
All right. If anyone else has anything, yeah, what's up?
No, I'm just.
Oh, what?
I was just stretching.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Panelists talk.
You don't have any thoughts? Can I just put you in a hot seat, I guess?
It's really bothering me that panelists is spelled wrong. It's
Oh, I can't see anything. Also, I do have dyslexia, and I'm sorry. Just, I can't really see. Panelists. Okay. Thank you. Well, that was an easily resolved comment. Great. What's up?
I was just gonna expand on the volunteer benefits. I think just a general rule of thumb is if you don't, like, for email and business cards, if you don't have a reason to need them, like if you're not directly contacting people, you shouldn't have it unless it's needed.
Okay. That's cool. Well, some organizations, like I did work at Chick Tech, for example, they do have just like blank business cards that are just like very bare bones that just like give like contact at chicagochicktech.org, which is something that I had hoped to order, but it kind of got delayed in the mail. So sorry I don't have them to hand out. But that is a very good point of being like, this isn't a requirement. It's just something available to you. What's up, Josiah?
This is something that I've seen happen a lot, so just if you want to write it down in your notes, I'm also taking notes.
Great.
We should probably clarify internal contact versus external contact. It's a lot easier for volunteers to talk to volunteers.
Yeah.
With like non-professional emails. If you like, I think as a rule of thumb so far, we've been pretty good about it. Not contacting people outside of the staff block or outside of the organization with non-manifest emails about manifest business.
Oh,
That's it's kind of.
wow. I like that.
That's a better way of putting it.
Like only contact people, like if you want to talk to a band asking something, you're coming as a manifest representative, try to use your manifest email.
So just to repeat it, this is talking about if you are going to conduct MAGFest business, for example, contacting a band about booking, to use your MAGFest email as opposed to your personal email. That's makes a lot of sense.
Create credentials, like because you have a MAGFest address, and also you don't get band members coming back asking MAGFest, how did this random person get my email address?
Great.
You know, it might be on the up and up. They don't know that right off the bat.
Oh my god, I can't read it. Okay.
Yeah, it may not be the best example.
What's up?
So I know that you go over the, like, if you're gonna do a promotions event or like off hours, you know, how like the hourly or badge hotel room situation is compensated. But do you think it's worth putting in a section about like, for lack of a better word, like staffer or MAGFest representative decorum while at another event, on shift and off shift?
Definitely, I do.
Yeah, that's a great, you should represent, yeah.
Yeah, because like if let's say we have a crew that goes to PAX, you know, if they're off shift, they're still going to be roaming around in a MAGFest shirt, and that still represents us as a brand and us as a nonprofit.
That's kind of like a top level thing, like a represent the organization well in all walks of life sort of thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Because you'll naturally tend to use your power by saying, oh, I'm a MAGFest staffer, and then you go get drunk in the hallway.
To be fair, trusted staffers do that.
I don't know anything about
Huh.
what you're talking about.
That's a lot to summarize very quickly in the microphone, but the concern is again about like shirt decorum and how to represent MAGFest when you're off shift at a promo event. So are you thinking about like writing like tips and tricks of like how, or more like a list of like don't do
Yeah,
this?
like things to avoid.
Okay. Cool.
I mean, but really both sides of that fence are awesome. Tips and tricks and things to avoid are both really, really good.
All right. I'll write it all. No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
Is it a code of ethics?
Code of
It
ethics.
kind of does.
Whoa.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's like having
I like
integrity,
that.
be respectful, and like,
Yeah.
you don't have to be like super professional, I guess, but like be polite.
Yeah.
You know, like just, and like make a list of those very specific things. Yeah.
Great. I saw there was a hand over there. What's up?
Could there be a clarification on what trusted means for instance?
Oh yeah, that is a.
That's a software-defined issue.
Oh. Okay. I've heard that it is a software-defined issue and that it doesn't exist any longer. That it was a whole.
It's still
All right, there are conflicting stories from the past. And that's cool, that's cool. It is, yep, all right. This is our Uber stops experts. I'm calling them in. Josiah will hop on any panel anytime if you need help.
I
by the
absolutely
way.
love talking into microphones. Eli, do you want to talk first, and I'll just add anything if you need to?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah, so actually, Trusted is a really good example of something that, we sort of outgrew like 5 years ago, but only really found the time to fix like this year. So what we're actually doing now is that each department, instead of saying, oh, I have trusted and restricted shifts, can actually define roles within your department, right? Because like tech ops might care about like, oh, does this person know how to administer like Windows computers, and like, does this person know how to crimp cables? Whereas like consoles cares about a completely separate set of things. So each department can either just completely ignore this and then just have shifts that anyone can sign up for, or you can go in and then just define roles within the department, and then for each shift say, I only want people who have one or more of these roles to be able to sign up. And so that has basically replaced Trusted. And if you want to just have Trusted like be a role, you can do that. It's kind of backwards compatible in that way. But
yeah, actually, every department starts with the trusted role by default. So,
right.
Yeah, if you're still seeing trusted in the user interface, that's because that role was just added for backwards compatibility.
Right.
Oh, I use it like when we're making like Rock Island shows or something.
Yeah.
People who are,
Yeah, that's perfect. That's totally what it's there for.
All right, these guys explained it really well. I'll just add a personal anecdote.
People who can deal with money who should.
My first MAGFest event, I volunteered right out the gate. I signed on for like a chip space AV op shifts. Had to send in a resume. They marked me as trusted. The next year I got imported as trusted, and then chip space like filled up. So I just went to the next department, and apparently, the way we used to do it, if you're trusted to run dangerous electrical equipment, you're also trusted to handle money. So now everything's much, much better.
So, long story short, it is evolving. But that does bring up another really good point, is that I do want there to be like a department head handbook later down the road that would hopefully like help explain some of these more technical things. Great. Is there anything else anyone wanted to add? Oh.
Yes. I know well, there's a couple of things, but the first thing is, I know that, trying to make the anti-harassment, anti-assault policy, but say if there's a second guest, or like maybe a special guest, like maybe a panelist that did something that was not at this convention.
Right.
Have you thought about any ways you would handle that, assuming that you have the knowledge beforehand? Of course, if you don't know about it, then.
Yeah, so that is a point of contention among some people. The way that our code of conduct works is we cannot necessarily ban someone for out of event conduct, because then we get into tricky law enforcement territory. But that's just my interpretation of that. Unless there's, okay. Unless there's a restraining order against them.
And that the person who has the restraining order is also coming.
The person who has a restraining order also must attend MAGFest. Also, Nick looks like he wants to talk.
From a code of conduct perspective, if someone does something at a different event, that doesn't automatically mean they're banned from MAGFest. But if it's a guest that's known to have done something, our guests and analysts booking department will likely keep that in mind and considering whether or not to book.
To summarize what he just said, he said, from a code of conduct perspective, we can't necessarily ban someone for out of event contacts, but our booking, guest and booking will keep guest conduct in mind when they book people.
Do we not reserve the right to bar anyone for any reason?
We can, but
our code of conduct is really long.
All right. I really want to like answer your question, but it is a very kind of tricky can of worms. Was there anything else you wanted to add really quickly? Shh.
And also the other thing.
Yeah.
This year, first shift, because of the snowstorm, I was almost late to it.
Mm-hmm.
I just would like to iron out policy of what happens if you were late, but it's not your fault, it was due to the weather.
Yeah, so again, we don't have that actually strictly defined, but I would say that in my experience, like in the stops office, we, if you contact your department head's usually pretty understanding of that. And then if missing that shift bumps you under required hours for perks, we work with those volunteers to find shifts to help them out. So it's generally forgiven, I would say.
Everybody repeat after me.
Communication is key. Oh, I was the only one who did it.
All together, Kevin!
Communication
is key!
Be hostile to your volunteer.
Okay, so basically just if, as long as you're proactive about that situation, it should be okay. So just as long as you tell people as soon as you realize that you may be late, it's cool in my book. And then again, like I said, if that bumps you under required hour to like qualify for a hotel room, we will find you shifts to make that up, even if it's after the event. Okay, what's up?
I was just gonna say, kind of based off of that, it might be good because I'm a person that goes back and forth because sharing a hotel with me is a horrible idea, straight up. But anyway, beyond that, it's just good for like DHs or whatever to be informed, even if you just need to go to your department and be like, is there anyone that's commuting in a way that like might have like travel impediments?
Great. I could probably take a couple more comments and then I'm gonna hop off the stage, but I'll still be around. Oh, what's up, Tazaya?
When are we going to see more pictures of Mochi?
Yeah.
When are we gonna see more pictures of Mochi?
Send them out in the staff newsletter? Yes.
I guess I sent out. The question was, can I send out pictures of my dog in the staff newsletter? Maybe one day we can just have a staff newsletter that's just all of our pets. Isn't that kind of cute? All right. Were there any other like comments that were relevant? Or sorry. It is relevant. Oh, hello, Dom.
I actually just thought of something random that might be good.
Dom just thought of something.
So our departments all have very different structures and
Yep.
features that bug. So it might be worth noting true volunteers that when
Oh.
you're in different departments, you'll have potentially different structures that emerge.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And like, it's okay. Like beyond the department heads, there's not really a standard structure, and that's kind of like.
So just to summarize, Dom, it was just informing volunteers that different departments have different structures and different ways of managing, and that's okay. That's important, because again, that's something that like could just be taken assumed. What's up?
Can I also add?
Oh, yeah.
There's some sort of contact info for their department head or anybody who's like co-department head? Because
Yeah.
let's say you work a security shift, you won't know unless
Yeah.
you call
Oh.
the security hotline,
Right. Okay.
which we've had people do saying, I'm very
Oh
sick.
my God. Yeah. All right. And again, that is I do want to send out like more individualized emails with that sort of info, in addition to just having like a very broad per event, like here's the list of contacts for each department. All right. One last one, and then I'll leave.
Make it good.
Oh, what's up?
Completely unrelated to all this.
Oh.
About the warehouse.
Oh, anything about the warehouse? Yeah, I do really want to work with Matt Beal on warehouse stuff. That's his wheelhouse, and I am not going to impose his domain of authority as Lord of Logistics.
At least just having some information I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Contact Matt and just general information about it.
That's great. I'm going to do that. I guess there's 2 warehouses. Okay. Okay, Hachi, this is for real the last one.
Thanks for doing this, it's really important.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, well, that's very sweet. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for listening to me ramble and for your suggestions, and I look forward to continuing the conversation elsewhere. Bye.